The Supreme Court, led by John Roberts, has refused tons of election lawsuits. I think we're up to about 800 billion lawsuits now that they've dismissed and refused to hear. And now they finally agreed to hear a lawsuit from Arizona, but it's going to benefit Democrats, so they'll give it a hearing.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
This doesn't seem fair. Has John Roberts lost his mind? I mean, I don't even know why I'm asking. It's only kind of rhetorical. This case at the Supreme Court is going to put John Roberts against Clarence Thomas, and we'll find out who wins. The headline over at Gateway Pundit says, Supreme Court agrees to hear Arizona case that could put new limits on voting rights lawsuits. Democrats believe the Arizona law places an unequal burden on racial minorities. Brr, I'm stopping right there on racial minorities. They already assume, this is such an insult, that Democrats would think that racial minorities can't figure out what precinct to deliver their votes in. That's what they're saying. I would never put that on another man. It is so degrading. And the idea that somehow non-racial minorities don't have that problem, but racial minorities do have that problem, is part of the inherent, this is the soft bigotry of low expectations that's in all this Democrat stuff. It is so degrading. We shouldn't tolerate this. 8 years after carving the heart out of a landmark voting rights law, the Supreme Court is looking at putting new limits on efforts to combat racial discrimination in voting. The justices are taking up a case about Arizona restrictions on ballot collection and another policy that penalizes voters who cast ballots in the wrong precinct. The High Court's consideration comes as Republican officials in the state and around the country have proposed more than 150 measures following last year's elections to restrict voting access that civil rights groups say would disproportionately affect Black and Hispanic voters. One thing I am interested in is finding out what Clarence Thomas decides on this, because even on the voting problems that were on the right, he wanted to hear them. So Clarence Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch should also want to hear these. That's the interesting precedent that's been set. They'll be the only ones that are consistent if they do. This is so degrading to minorities. Like I said already, no one should be standing for this. No one should fall for what they're trying to do. And now the question comes down to the Supreme Court. They've gotten their jollies at dismissing, not looking at lawsuits that have been brought up by anyone on the Republican side. And now we find out how they treat this side. I already know that, Sotomayor is going to want to see it. All of the lefties are going to want to see it. Kagan's going to want to see it. Question is John Roberts. Why is he going to suddenly see this? I wonder. John Roberts, let's see what Amy Coney Barrett says. It will surprise me if they take up this suit. It will reveal so much, so clearly. It's one thing to have a slant against the right. It's another thing to give the left a total pass. Let's find out, but it doesn't look good because we already know that Roberts is a weasel. I'm Doug TenNapel in Exile.